Are we being primed, Gordon, for some major announcement?
Well, that's the thing is, now the Zetas say that the Council of Worlds has told the president, you've got to announce it. I say, everyone I tell that to goes, well, I'll eat my hat if the president ever announced that. But if he did, you can speculate that the first thing he would say is Ronald Reagan had an executive order that this is top secret, and every other president signed on, but now I'm going to be the one who's breaking that because everybody has to know.
And what would he, well, we're coming up to the break. When we come back, speculate on what you think he would say, okay? With our special guest, Gordon James Giannotto. And we're talking about Planet X. Now, he has sent us some interesting pictures that you should get up to coasttocoastam.com and just take a look at them and make up your own mind. And I'll be back in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. If you need to email me, that's George at coasttocoastam.com. Well, next hour, we'll take your phone calls with Gordon James Giannotto as we talk about Planet X. And welcome back to Coast with Gordon James Giannotto. Gordon, let's speculate a little bit on if there's an announcement of this planet. How will it be announced?
Well, there's two lines of thought. One is from the Zetas that the Council of Worlds has told the president that he has to announce it. The other is my line of thought, which is that how can he not announce it? Because as Planet X comes closer and closer to the Earth, eventually it's going to come very close. It's going to be as large as the full moon, and it's going to grab the Great Atlantic Rift and pull it up. And people don't realize that the continents are granite and they float on the magma core, so they're just floating there. So the Great Atlantic Rift is a line of mountains right down the center of the Atlantic Ocean from Iceland to Antarctic, and there's an upwelling of magma right there. And as the North Pole of Planet X is in line with the sun, as Planet X is in line with the sun, and the North Pole is pointed at the Earth, it's every day when the Atlantic Ocean faces the sun, the Atlantic Rift gets pulled down towards Planet X, and then as the Earth continues to turn, it gets released, because when the North Pole of Earth starts going towards the North Pole of Planet X, then it gets pushed back. But so eventually what's going to happen is Planet X is going to grab the crust. It's going to be close enough that the crust will stop turning with the core. So nothing changes the core, and nothing changes the North Pole of Earth pointing up. But what's going to happen is Planet X is trying to go by, and the day it goes by, it's going to grab the crust and slide it up over the North Pole and then let go of it. And when it lets go of it, the new North Pole is going to be the eastern tip of Brazil, Recife, Brazil. And there's going to be 600-foot tidal waves followed by the tail of Planet X brushing the Earth with all these rocks, which was one of them was the meteor over Russia.
So you're talking catastrophe here.
Absolute catastrophe. But the thing is that after that, with no governments and no religions and no economy, the unselfish ETs are going to come and give unspecified help to unselfish survival communities. So, because people say, well, all the nuclear reactors are all on faults all over the world, but, they could transmute the half-life of plutonium from 125,000 years to 1.25 seconds. So, but they haven't said what they're going to do because we're supposed to be taking some responsibility for ourselves. So,
what's the timetable on this?
Well, see, that's the thing. There isn't a timetable, and that's the number one question everyone asks. Well, when is this going to happen? But the thing is it could happen at any time. The only country that's taken any provision is China, which has built these ghost cities because, remember I had said that the southeastern China plate was going to be sinking. Well, Jakarta, Indonesia, parts of it are 85 feet below sea level. That sinking is almost 70% complete in that tip of the Southeast Asian plate. But all the other earth changes have stopped. And I was talking to Nancy on the phone. I said, that I heard that these metal boxes were found on the beaches in Oregon and they were vibrating. And I said, I think there's extraterrestrial devices. And Nancy started saying, no, I've told you before, there's no extraterrestrial devices on Earth. And all of a sudden the Zetas broke through Nancy, and speaking through her to me, they said, this is absolutely true. And she later wrote about this, and this was, you remember, people have said, well, there weren't any boxes or it was a hoax or whatever, but it is true. On all the faults of the Earth, there are tens of thousands of these boxes vibrating, and what they're doing is instead of letting the movement of the plates, because the roiling of the magma deep in the core of the Earth is causing these quakes and these other shifts. The north end of South America is going to move to the west. The north end of Africa is going to move to the east. The Atlantic is going to get wider. The Pacific is going to get narrower. So there's all these things. And the Zetas had said there was an event calendar, and 7 was preliminary Earth changes, 8 was massive social change, and 9 was worldwide volcanoes, earthquakes, and sinkings. And so anyway, these metal boxes have put that off, and the reason why is because they want to have the massive social change. And you can imagine if the president does announce it, of course there's going to be massive social change.
Well, if it's going to happen, will he announce it? To me, it sounds like he's compelled to.
Well, that's my thinking, is because when it finally separates from the sun far enough that you can see it with your naked eye. Now, I've said I've gone out, my wife has gone out, I've got hundreds of pictures of 2 suns in the sky that I took myself. Now, if I can do that, then anyone can do that. And, so there it is. There's this bright glowing area. You're not looking at Planet X itself because it's in between the Earth and the sun, so it's like trying to photograph the new moon. You just can't do it. But it's got a 5 million mile long or 10 million mile long, it's really, it's a long tail, twin-stranded, stretching towards the Earth because of static electricity. So Planet X is not going anywhere. It's sitting there. And the clump of 4 planets, the dark twin, Venus, the Earth, and Planet X, are still rotating around the sun, but they're not moving in relation to each other. And the tail is stretched towards the Earth, so that rock that came down over Russia and the other ones that were seen over San Francisco and Cuba and Japan are all from the tail of planet rocks, and there's trillions of them. So this is going to be a big disaster. So when the president announces it, I'm not sitting in his office privy to whatever they're deciding, but I can tell you this. They really don't want people he's not going to use the word Planet X because that's the term that the Zetas have used and that is on Zeta Talk is Planet X.
That's panic time, right?
So they don't want people to run to Google, do a search, and go, oh, look, there's a woman in Wisconsin who's been in telepathic contact with extraterrestrials, because that reveals 2 things. We're about to have giant disasters, and second of all, there are extraterrestrials who have been telling the truth since 1995. So they don't want to do that. So it's interesting that they started talking about it as nibiru. So I was talking to Nancy, and she's starting to, every time she says Planet X, she goes AKA Nibiru or dash Nibiru or slash Nibiru, so that if anybody does a Google search on Nibiru, they're still going to come up with Zeta Talk. So he's going to say, look, Reagan signed an executive order making it top secret. Every president signed on, but I'm such a humanitarian that I'm telling you that there has been a planet between the Earth and the Sun for 9 years. And why not? I mean, if it separates from the sun where every single person on Earth looks up and goes, oh, my God, what's that? And the glowing area, the thing that's at the 5 o'clock position, is the tail, which is sort of transparent, translucent, whatever you want to say, because it's a cloud of dust or red iron oxide dust. It's lit by the sun, and you can see that from Earth. So that's what people are taking pictures of, is the tail of Planet X stretching towards the Earth. And you can't see Planet X itself, but one of these days, when it gets far enough from the sun, you are going to see it. And then at that day, George, don't you think everyone's going to go, the government couldn't tell us there's a planet?
Sure, absolutely. No,
and they're never going to believe another word the government ever says again for any reason.
Not at all. All right, 6.8 billion people, Gordon, on the planet. How many people may perish?
Probably 60% are going to die exactly at the moment of pole shift, and another 30% are going to die from disease and starvation and shock. I mean, what the president should be announcing and saying, listen, we've got to move away from the coastlines I mean, imagine what a